what you're describing is an incredibly powerful feature of AI, to be able to ask specific questions that are just really hard to Google. When you know a topic well enough to go, wait a minute, what about this one thing? And it can be really hard to get an answer to that. But with an AI, you can ask that specific question, and a lot of times you will get a specific answer that's exactly what you were looking for.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Screens, IT at ND, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the IT solutions consultants at the University of Notre Dame.
Here we explore the challenges they face, the innovative solutions they provide, and the tips and tricks that can help you make the most of your technology. I'm Krista Moats, the Manager of Communications and Marketing in the OIT.
And I'm Scooter, Director of Information Technology for the College of Arts and Letters. We're thrilled to have you with us today. I have just a few quick notes before we get started for our live audience. This is the 6th episode of our Behind the Screens podcast. The 5th episode just went live on Monday, so if you haven't heard that yet, do please check it out. Our first 4 episodes have had 639 views or downloads so far, which sounds very good to us. We don't have a solid metric to compare it to, but that seems really nice. Those are all out on Spreaker, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify. So choose your favorite place and go find them. And thank you all, both live and listening, for so much for listening to us. And we want to make a special thank you today to Kristen Moran and Enhanced Technology Partnerships for funding the rental of today's audio equipment for us.
Yep. Thank you, Kristen. And thank you all for listening. That's so awesome. We're excited to be doing this recording live today. For those listening to the recording, we are recording today's broadcast live at the IT at ND retreat at the Mendoza College of Business. And after we get done with our panelists, we're going to open it up for some questions. Any of the AI related questions that you have, or any questions on anything that you heard the guests speak about today.
And
so let's get started.
Yeah. And do note for our live audience, our producer, Andy Janetsky, does a lot of post-production for us. So we expect mistakes, we expect little slip-ups, and we invite you to be a part of that. So laugh with us. A lot of that stuff comes out in the post-editing. So it's all cool.
Edited is not to be confused with left out, though, because he'll just put it at the end. And
that's right. There. You may become part of our bloopers reel, so be aware of that.
So this whole thing stays in, right?
That's right.
Okay,
everything
good.
stays in.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Great. All right. So, Krista, you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have each guest introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about what you do for the university and how AI fits into all of that. And so we've got Brandon Rich here from the Office of Information Technology.
Hi there.
And he's going to talk to us about current and future use of AI on campus.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Krista. Thanks, Scooter, for the invitation. I've always wanted to be on a podcast, but I'm a little nervous being here. I gotta admit, it's an interesting experience.
We usually face a wall when we do these, so
yeah, we're super serious.
And we're facing people, but we got friends out here.
Stakes are high.
So yeah, my name is Brandon Rich. I've been with the university since 2005, so I'm coming up on a very big anniversary here, and it's been a really great experience. I've had a lot of different things that I've done at Notre Dame over the years. I see one of my first colleagues, Will Burkert, out in the audience here. We started on the teaching and learning team way back when, and I came up through application development. I did web development, integrations. I worked in the registrar for a little while, which was a really interesting experience, and came back to do architecture in the OIT around applications, integration, cloud. I've been an enterprise architect. I've been here long enough to have had many different titles. But I'm really excited about what I'm doing now as director of the new team called AI Enablement. And we sort of considered our mission to enhance and accelerate the great work that our campus community is doing through the responsible innovation with AI. And so we are looking at what are those ways that we can bring out the most impactful, high-value cases that we can do with AI and all the many, many different ways that we know it can be applied, while at the same time helping people through what is a really transformational change in their day-to-day life and in their life beyond Notre Dame, and how do we help people navigate that? So, yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how do you feel like the reception's been so far?
It's been great. It's funny. I mean, this is a job that takes me all over campus, which I think is great. Something I've really enjoyed about it, getting to talk to all kinds of different folks. And there's such a range of interest and knowledge and feelings about AI. We've talked to a lot of people that are very enthusiastic. We've heard a lot of use cases that people want to try out, things that people want to do that we're excited to help them with. We hear things that people think, can AI do this? And we go, whoa, it's maybe not that powerful yet, but things that pique our interest that we think, maybe we can do something like that. Maybe we can push the boundaries a little bit and try something new here. We also hear from people, of course, who are trepidatious in different ways. This certainly comes into play on the academy side, where academic integrity is a huge issue. And so, one of the things that we say is we are here not to push AI. We're not here to bring AI to campus. AI is here already. Mm-hmm. Our goal is to be right there with faculty, staff, and students as we navigate this change that's happening, and try to find the best possible way to apply it here at Notre Dame in a responsible and ethical way.
Awesome. Yeah.
Excellent. Our next guest today is Steve Cohen. Steve is the Director of Technology and Data in Human Resources. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Great. Can you, similarly, can you give us just a little bit of your background, what brought you to Notre Dame, how long you've been here, and how AI fits into your role?
Yeah, I'm a first-time podcast person as well, like Brandon. In a past life, I actually used to be on the radio. That was kind of what I did in college. I used to call sports games and stuff. So
that's Krista's background as well, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Broadcast TV. Yeah.
Hey, there we go. We'll talk later. But anyway, so I've been to university. All in different roles within human resources. Actually, just hit my 10-year anniversary last month.
Congrats!
Thank you.
Anniversary.
Thank you. But I've been in this role for a little over 3 years now. I'm kind of leading the IT side of human resources, working with a lot of groups all over campus and OIT, and was in some other various roles within HR. On the way, doing systems work, data analytics, things like that. I think what's been the most interesting about kind of the emergence of AI in the last 2 years, and I can still clearly remember the first time that as a group of us in HR had our first experience with ChatGPT. I guess we'll just go into a little bit of a story here. We had a half-day workshop. We were going to work on, for our operations team, we were going to make a mission and vision statement. That's what we were going to spend half a day doing. And I think this was just days after OpenAI released ChatGPT out into the wild. And we tried it, and I think we were done in 20 minutes. We put the things into the button. And so the thing that's been just amazing to see, at least in our neck of the woods and just with other folks I've talked to about AI, is just how curious people are about it. And when you try it for the first time, so many people, you're not necessarily getting into the weeds of thinking of some of the downsides of it. It's just wow, look what this thing can do. Right? It's whatever your use case happens to be. And so it's sparked this curiosity that I've never really seen in anything kind of similar to that. Where I am in human resources, right? We don't have a lot of people who are overly curious or excited about technology. Just in general, they use it, it's kind of a means to an end, right? I work with people, right? They're on campus making those connections and stuff. So to see that kind of enthusiasm around AI and just people willing to just dive in head first into trying, a tool like Scribe or a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude or whatever, just to see them really get in there and try. It's just been fascinating to watch. And then seeing the connections being made of, I could use it to do this thing, or I could use it to do this. It's been just incredible to see. And so that's why I just kind of love talking about this sort of stuff and just hearing from others, right? And being part of all these other groups that are working with AI, just how are people using this to kind of better, not just their lives here working wise, but just even their own personal lives.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're having the experience. I've heard people talk about that AI right now is as revolutionary as the beginning of the internet was, that it was such a game changer, that it wasn't just an additional technology or just a little plus one, but it's a completely revolutionary thing. Sounds like you're describing that your folks are having that experience. Is that?
That's completely fair. And it's, you've seen the switch in real time of, you sometimes you would, give a new tool to people and be like, all right, go in and play with this tool. And you'd have to prompt them of what to do, or people wouldn't do it. Right. You've started to see people now say, I'm going to use AI first to try to tackle this thing. And then if it doesn't work, they go back to the traditional methods where it was kind of the flip side before. So that's just been in real time. That's
it's
just
like integrating faster into work. Than
it's incredible to see.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's really cool to see like the embrace of everybody.
And our third and final guest, is Alexi Orchard. Alexi is the Assistant Teaching Professor and Director of Undergraduate Studies for the IDSIC Computing and Digital Technologies minor in the College of Arts and Letters. Besides having a fascinating title, she's winning for the longest title today.
Welcome, Alexi.
Welcome, Alexi. Yes.
I have the longest title, but I've been here the shortest amount of time.
There you go.
I just started working here in September, and I previously did my PhD at the University of Waterloo. Broadly speaking in technology ethics. And so that's kind of what I'm teaching here now at Notre Dame. 2 classes I teach are, one is an intro to social implications of technology, and one is called Generative AI in the Wild, which I co-teach with John Behrens. And it's a course that's kind of emulating what's happening in the real world right now. Basically, the structure is like, what is this thing? What's going on? And then how is it useful? And then what are the implications? And so the course has evolved since it was first offered in 2023. And all the time we are constantly updating what's going on in the course to match kind of what's happening out in the real world, so that students can kind of be prepared to see what it's like in the workforce as it's different from how it's been looking in their education, which is quite different.
And are you finding that there's only a small subset of students that are interested in this, or are you getting a broader swath of majors, or who's taking this class?
Yeah, so half the class, it's 55 students are allowed to enroll in the class now. It actually was previously only 30, and it has now grown quite a bit. And about half the class are students from across the university, from different majors, from science, from accounting, from arts and letters, global affairs. And then half the class is kind of allotted to people who are in the Technology and Digital Studies program, which is a minor within, which includes 2 different minors in arts and letters.
Yeah, I'd imagine too that you have to like really kind of roll with whatever the news serves up, like, and like how things are shifting and changing all the time.
For sure, especially now as we're seeing more like image and video come out of generative models. Like we are just rolling with the punches as far as that goes. But we have quite a depth now understanding what text generation can do.
Yeah, well, and especially you mentioned photo and video and people getting really kind of duped by those things too, and believing stuff that isn't real. And
No, we definitely talk about kind of the broader social implications related to things like mis or disinformation, and authenticity, and how expertise is presented in the media now, and questioned in the media now. And generative AI has definitely fueled the flames on what is real, what is not, what can I trust. How do I work effectively and responsibly with that in mind?
Yeah. So I would like, before we open it up to questions for the audience, I would love to see, do you guys have questions for each other?
I've got a couple up my sleeve too.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see what you have. What do you have for each other? We learned before we started today that Alexi and Brandon have worked together a little bit, but Alexi had not met Steve. Steve and Brandon, you guys know each other, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So we're acquainted. We're kind of 2 out of 3 on the thing. So, let me ask this a little more pointed way. Brandon and Steve, who are working sort of directly with it, trying to talk to faculty, trying to talk to students, trying to see how it works on campus. How much do you talk currently about the ethics of what's happening, and what is, Alexi, then what do you bring to the picture that's going to complement their sort of promotion of it, or the work that they're doing? I guess that's how I want to frame it.
Yeah, I think this is a really important facet of this whole discussion. It's such a wide field what we're doing. On our team, we are looking at what can we bring in terms of technological capabilities to campus, but we also have this incredibly vast sphere of just AI education, communication, outreach, literacy, and the ethical approach to AI is definitely something that we think about a lot. And I think that we need to do more of in 2025. If you go back to kind of the foundational documents that kicked off at least my team, it's the Generative AI Task Force report, which is on ai.nd.edu. And you can see that it is framed through the lens of responsible AI, ethical AI. It mentions Catholic teaching and some things that kind of drive that ethos. And so I am also concerned about some of the societal things that you mentioned. I mean, we have to equip people for a scenario where audio can be mimicked, video can be mimicked. Now, these things are already possible to do. It's just that the barrier to entry is so much lower. So whatever sort of media literacy that we were equipping people with to be savvy about what they're consuming, we really have to amp that up, and it's hard. But I'm really glad we have classes like yours, and we're trying to tackle the same sorts of questions in a series that we call Get to Know AI. So this is a monthly webinar. It's a hybrid meeting that we're doing. I'm indebted to one of my team members, Roberto Casares, who has headed up a working group to put all these together. So I'm just looking at the list. We've already had, and they're all up on the website, we've had sort of a basics of AI. Everywhere we go, we got to teach people how this stuff works to just immediately dispel some of the misconceptions and get people on a level playing field. We had sessions that were directed at faculty, at students. We talked about responsible AI. In the spring, we're going to have a session on AI and copyright and sort of the ownership of work. Nice. AI impact on society, AI and sustainability. That's a huge thing when we talk about the ethical use of AI. This one I love, the title, What Does It Mean to Be Human in the Age of AI? So we're going to bring in a philosophical perspective. And art and multimedia, I think that's maybe a Casey Keel special. So yeah, we're trying to tackle all these different facets. So in some small way, I hope we're helping.
And again, that's ai.nd.edu.
That's right.
For all the Get to Know AI upcoming classes. And the previous ones are up there too.
Yes, all recorded.
And I think I know the answer to the what makes us human, or at least the image I've seen going around says it's selecting all the traffic lights. That's what makes us human. So maybe a really short session for that one.
Or you spin the wheel until the dog lines up in the middle.
Oh, those are my favorite.
Yeah.
So Alexi, I'm really curious. You're in a spot where I know when I've had conversations with John Behrens that he has talked about that it's not going to be a question of that the competition is not humans against AI necessarily, no matter what all the movies tell us, but it's really that it's the human plus the AI is going to be the person that gets the work as opposed to the human that doesn't utilize AI. So it seems like there's sort of a mandate or sort of a necessity for us doing that. And that's, part of why, kids are going through these classes. And at the same time, we also know something about the environmental impact, which maybe you can speak to a little bit. And we know about these other societal issues. And I really feel like, and I guess the question is, are you walking kind of a fine line between these two things of trying to support the use of it while being mindful of all of the ethical and responsibility questions at the same time? How do you thread that needle?
For sure. I mean, I think that's a tension that students are aware of when they come into the class. And lots of times students will actually come into the class being really unsure about using it. And maybe that's because they are in other classes not allowed to use it. So they just kind of have like this little standoffish approach to it being so welcome. And they're aware already that it can be used in, offensive and inappropriate ways. Mm-hmm. So it's actually through the process of the class of them actually learning to experiment with it, trying different tools, that they really see the limitations of it. And I think that might be the only way to really feel some sort of security that, you can work with this productively, to know that it is quite limited in some ways. And so, yeah, I mean, what we would like to do is make students aware of these possible impacts, but also make them effective in using it, knowing when to use it and knowing when not to use it, or when it's just not useful. So that's kind of how it works in the class. In terms of the environmental impacts. Something that we're thinking about a lot is, how many words are we generating? How many tokens are we using? How much images and video content are we producing? And through the different tools that we have, we have ways to keep track of that. And so part of the class is us also, being able to translate potentially, how much CO2 could this produce, or how much electricity is this using, or how much water consumption does this have, or where are the data centers that are potentially powering our usage in this class. And so being aware of that is kind of the first step, and it's definitely, more research coming out around the environmental impacts is making that conversation stronger.
Yeah, we're going to have that session in the spring on sustainability with Yark Nabrisky from Center for Research Computing. And I'm really looking forward to it, because when I brought this up to him and some of the concerns I was hearing from people, he said, well, did you say anything about the ways that AI is helping the environment or helping with sustainability? And so part of his perspective was, let's think about the research that is actually being enabled by the use of this technology that's accelerating our ability to, do things like fight climate change. I know that's not the entire story, but you can take a perspective on all this stuff. Some people are very rah-rah and they don't, think about some of the drawbacks. Some people are on the complete opposite end. And I think one of our jobs is to bridge that and be real about the truly incredible possibilities that we have in front of us, and also how we can best mitigate, some of the drawbacks that are real. So.
Yeah, and so talking about some of the drawbacks, I think kind of what goes along with that, spark of kind of curiosity is like there's this inherent trust that people have in these tools, especially when the first few times you use it, it tells you exactly what you want to know.
Oh, yeah.
People just trust it. And so like what we're seeing is just, the bot doesn't always get it right. There's hallucinations. They may make up information. And so how do we empower people to really critically look at the output that's coming out of these things so they can really understand, like, no, I don't think this is actually right. In our neck of the woods, we did a proof of concept during the Chat GPT team pilot. We had several folks from Human Resources as a member of that pilot team, where we wanted to say, hey, can we make like an open enrollment assistant? Right? We take all of our plan documents from our medical plans, our dental, our vision, our retirement. We feed it into a bot, and we allow people to have a conversation with it to learn more about their benefits. And the idea around that is, we get some really specific questions around open enrollment that are really specific to the person. And what we found consistently as we were going through it was like, this bot was just hallucinating all day long. It would be because there's the summary plan descriptions. If you ever get that, giant packet of information in the mail every year, right? There is a lot of policy, and there's a lot that goes into one of those things. Mm-hmm. And so, the bot may not always know where to look. And so just kind of taking that to other areas where we've started to use AI, especially for people who just like trust the tool. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily looking for, oh, this isn't right or what's wrong. So I feel like that's something we have to tackle, right? Yeah. It's like how do we train, and have people understand what they're actually looking at.
Yeah, I ignore that disclaimer.
Well, so does everyone else.
It's like Chat GPT may make mistakes, but you're not though, right? You're not.
It's incredibly.
You're saying real stuff.
Yeah, it's very challenging. There have been times where I go, oh man, how useful is this stuff if it hallucinates like that? And yet I find that I'm using it effectively in my own work every day, and it's provided value to me. But it is a different approach that people need to take. And we have to equip people to know how to engage with this stuff effectively, to have in their own head that sort of constant validation stage. Where they're assessing what the output is with a critical eye, and not just taking everything as read. The thing is, what you're describing is an incredibly powerful feature of AI, to be able to ask specific questions that are just really hard to Google. Mm-hmm. When you know a topic well enough to go, wait a minute, what about this one thing? And it can be really hard to get an answer to that. But with an AI, you can ask that specific question, and a lot of times you will get a specific answer that's exactly what you were looking for. But you have to know enough to go validate that answer yourself. Yeah. And what I'm encouraged by is the tools that are starting to get better about citing the sources that they have, giving you a path to go follow up on that. But we have to really, people, as you say, will skip that. And we really have to emphasize that that is an essential step of effectively using AI.
Yeah.
I imagine in those sorts of instances, you'd be in for, sticker shock if the, the chatbot tells you, oh yeah, it'll be a $50 copay and you get a $500 deductible.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Oh,
$1,000.
absolutely. Or
Right.
this expensive procedure that you need to have is covered.
It's-
just
it's
kidding,
okay.
it's not.
Right.
I mean,
Oops.
this is
Right. Risk
big
is high.
decisions.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll get there. Hey, I wanted to ask about Google Gemini. I know we've got a pilot happening on campus now,
We do, yeah.
and I would think, Brandon, could you tell us a little more about that? Or
I
guess
can a
anybody
little
can chime
bit. Yeah. So
It's early.
2025 is a year, folks. Like we're going to get all kinds of stuff in place. It's, I think, going to enable innovation at a larger scale than we've seen before. And part of that is getting some of these foundational capabilities in place for people. One of the things that comes out of the GATE report and is just really obvious is we need an AI tool that is accessible to everyone that protects our data. If you are not aware, even if you are a paying customer of OpenAI as an individual using ChatGPT+, your data is consumed by the system. It's used in the training of future models. Now, this is usually where I would go on a rabbit trail and kind of explain the AI is not always just absorbing information and getting smarter and smarter, but there is this step, this engineering step where they take your data and they train or fine-tune models. And what do all these models need now that they've consumed basically the entire internet? They just need more data, and they need more human data. And guess what? You're chatting with it, you're giving it human data. So a large part of what we're doing is looking at the terms of service, figuring out our license situations on different tools. What can we bring to campus that is actually going to provide data protections so that we can start using more than just public data? We can use, thinking of the data hierarchy, if you're familiar with that, the internal and sensitive data as well. So people can start to realize value using AI in their day-to-day work here at Notre Dame. So we've been doing that with the ChatGPT team pilot that we've had going for a couple of months now. And we think the real baseline chat capability that we're going to be able to bring to campus is Google Gemini. The great thing about this is it's included with a license that we already have around Google Workspace. A year ago, I might have said it's not the most exciting tool. They have released new models that underpin this chatbot since then. The Gemini models are really, really powerful. They brought more features to the platform, so it can do things that it couldn't do before that ChatGPT could, of giving you visualizations, generating images, creating code, running its own code. That turns out to be really important when you want anything quantitative. You can give any old chatbot a spreadsheet and say, do an analysis on this, and it'll give you something. But these are language models. They're not made for math, even though they will appear to do math sometimes. Don't be fooled. It's kind of a coincidence, honestly. If you want it to, what they are good at is generating code, and code can reliably be executed to give you good quantitative answers. So ChatGPT can do that. Gemini can do that. Another thing that's really exciting, I think, going to be for this crowd, for faculty and staff. Gemini also has hooks into Gmail, Docs, and Calendar, and even Tasks and some of the other Google services. So in the pilot we've seen, you can ask questions. Hey, I vaguely remember this email. I mean, how many of you come back from vacation and it's been long enough, your emails have scrolled off? I don't know why, in God's name, after 20 years, you still can't scroll down on Gmail. But how do you hunt for those things that you only sort of vaguely remember? Gemini is great at that. It can find things in your docs. So stay tuned. Maybe tomorrow you'll hear something about that coming to your neck of the woods. But we're hoping that can be that foundational layer that we can start to build on.
I think maybe we should open it up to audience Q&A.
Yeah.
Andy has a mic here in the back of the room. So anybody that has any questions for any of our panelists?
So obviously for those of us in IT, we love the innovation side of it. But can you talk about how you feel about maybe the societal impacts in terms of like when the internet was released, certain websites would kill certain jobs. And so I think of it from that standpoint of I love the innovation and what it can do, but also what it might take away and how we adjust to that.
Yeah, that is a huge question, and I'm sure my other panelists here will want to chime in. It's challenging. I mean, it is certainly a concern for a lot of different areas. I mean, I think of artists. I think of anybody. Coding is really interesting because it's extremely capable at coding. at least boilerplate. Like everything else, you need to be able to bring your own expertise to it, validate what it's getting out. The most capable, the best outcomes of people working with AI, I find, at least right now, are those that can bring their own expertise to it. That's why when I talk about what we hope for AI at Notre Dame, we talk about enhancing and accelerating the skills that we have already here in our workforce. I think right now that's absolutely true. Now, there are people that are rushing to build things that can take the human out of the loop. I don't think that's a good idea, especially right now with the capabilities of the tools that we have. So right now, I think of it as an accelerator for your own skills. Long term, I think we don't exactly know what the impact is going to be. I mean, there have been things, sort of just on the horizon for this for a long time. Automation of, for instance, shipping, and is this going to eliminate truck driving jobs? I mean, all these things are possible, and it's something that we, as a society, have to navigate. I think the thing that we have to do right now is figure out how we can take these tools and use them to augment the skills that we already have, and just continue to be vigilant as things change on us. Alexi, I mean, you must have some thoughts on this.
I mean, just generally, as AI develops, I guess we have to really identify our wants and our needs and our values, and know that those things are different for different people. As Scooter mentioned, my co-teacher, John, always says it won't be an AI taking your job. It will be a person who knows how to use AI effectively taking your job, potentially. So I think it's an opportunity for people to see how it works for them, to be transparent about that process. And if it can improve your workflow, that's great. If you still have, and you likely still will have, the expertise to do your job semi-independently, then you found that out in a responsible and effective way.
It feels like maybe in the last year, I've gotten more sales calls, emails, LinkedIn requests from all these different tech solution companies who can't wait to tell us about how they're integrating AI into their platforms, right? And so just all these different companies coming out of the woodworks, there's just such buzz around AI. And I think what we need to be better equipped of is when we're working with these companies, right, as we've shifted away to, we're not really building our own homegrown tools anymore, we're leveraging outside vendors. If we're looking at how AI is plugging into all these different vendors, like what are the things we should be looking for? How can we know going into looking at a new platform to address a need that we have? How are you using Copilot? How are you using the different tools, LLMs, like what is their responsible use around these tools? It feels like a lot of the companies we work with are still trying to figure this out too. So it's hard to really have like a good kind of approach to this. So that's what I'm, expecting to see in the next couple of years, is just how, even us as an institution, like how can we equip decision makers on this campus who are, when you have all these different companies who are trying to impress you with, here's how we are using this tool and that tool, like how can we be better informed to make good decisions and not just be kind of wowed by the glamour of the newest AI offering.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're comfortable, tell us who you are and where you work too.
My name is Lisa Weinberg, and I work in the OIT.
Thank you.
And my question goes back into the classroom. And so as we're doing AI in the wild for your class, and then you had mentioned that, some other classes don't allow AI. So I'm wondering how you're guiding our students to do the best they can with the coolest tool since the internet, when other classes are saying, we can't use that tool. So I'd like to know what you're guiding our students all the way down into the high school levels, or, this is when a calculator was introduced. Mm-hmm. You'll never have that in your pocket. So how are we guiding our young people to actually use this tool?
For sure. And so that's something we talk about in the first week of class is, bring us all the other generative AI policies that your teachers have been giving you. And we'll talk about what that means in the context of those classes. The things that you're learning in other classes, are they fundamental to you developing as a professional? Maybe you do need to know that, and you shouldn't automate, your work at this point. We kind of have to toe the line with talking to academic integrity. We actually have one of the leaders in the Office of Academic Integrity, Ardea Russo, come to class and talk to students about what the university is saying at a high level, and what are the reasoning, the rationale behind that? What are the tensions there? We recently been talking a lot more about using AI to just do grammar or just do citations, and does that count in the same way? Like, would you still be penalized if you just use it for those things as opposed to just generating your actual work? And so academic integrity has policies on that. I think other professors might have different policies on that. And so it's a really complicated time, but we just talk to students about, do you think this is important for you to know versus is this something that will enable you to learn something else better, if that kind of makes sense.
You guys spent a good amount of time running through that.
For sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I mean, this is extremely impactful to faculty, and there's a significant burden being placed on faculty right now because there is no one universal policy that's going to make sense for every discipline. And so a lot of it does fall to the individual instructor, and I know that has been challenging. You mentioned Ardea. I mean, gosh, go light a candle at the grotto for Ardea. She's got a tremendous influx of challenging cases, and it's always a difficult thing to adjudicate those academic integrity cases. But I think this has increased the uncertainty out there for people, and so I appreciate getting to work with her and other members of faculty. I also want to shout out Indie Learning, which includes the KNIB Center, and they do all kinds of work helping faculty with pedagogical methodology and things like that. And so they've got a great series of videos they put on their website. They're also about to kick off something they call the Indie Teaching Well with AI Academy. So that's going to be a really good resource for faculty here in the spring. There's a lot that it's going to take. This is a huge change management effort. I mean, be appreciative, all of you, that we have dedicated change management resources in IT. That is not something.
Changes.
Oh yeah,
I call them changes because I love them so much. Give them a nickname.
That is definitely not something that you find everywhere. And the methods and practices of change management are really essential, and I'm really thankful that the other member of my team right now is Joe Buchanan, who comes from that background, because we are constantly talking about, as we want to roll things out, who do we need to be thinking about, how's it going to impact people, who are the stakeholders, how do we need to be communicating with them to bring them along in this new world.
Well, I think as Steve mentioned earlier too, so many more products are just starting to bake AI into it. Some of them in very explicit ways that you can see, and some of it just sort of under the covers. And I would think that one of the challenges faculty would have in particular is where do we draw the line that something is corrected by AI or aided by AI or not? I mean, AI wasn't always in Grammarly, and yet it could always tell you, it could help you with your spelling, it could help you make some corrections. Now it's got some AI enable it. It's still making those same kinds of corrections, but does that mean your paper is now trash because it's AI enabled somehow? And
inauthentic.
That feels really blurry, and it feels very. How do we start to navigate that?
I mean, what I like to talk about with students is being able to write clearly and well is also a reflection of you thinking well and clearly. And I enjoy the student work that has personality in it. And Grammarly with AI would be the kind of place that might eliminate that personality, which is sad to see. And so I always tell students, I want what's in your brain. I really like your brain. Let's hear what you're thinking. Like, I don't need to know what has been regurgitated on the internet for this one. Like,
right.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and on those same lines too, is one of the uses we've had in HR is position descriptions. When you go out to the Notre Dame jobs website and you read through what a job is, virtually every position description that is posted out there now is run through a bot of some kind, right, to fix grammar. But just like you mentioned, you can tell it what kind of tone and to give it, and as you write more of these, you start to notice they all sort of start to sound the same, and you lose some of that personality. So, right, just like you said, like you can use these tools to help, but then you have to take that last step of, I've got to put some more personality, more of like our values, what matters to us, like more of that has to go in.
You know, one of the things that I think of in this discussion is we spend a lot of time thinking about generating text, doing summaries or knowledge retrieval out of documents. And this is only one slice of what AI can do for us. I'm really excited in the next year to explore things that are more oriented around workflows and decision making. I mean, even one of the first things that we deployed with AI really isn't doing this kind of generative work. It's more doing, I extremely hesitate to use the word reasoning, but it is doing a decision or analysis of a document and giving us some output. And it has to do with processing transfer applications. And we need to get some basic information off these syllabi that applicants send us. And this goes downstream, and humans look at it and verify this information, but just the ability for it to read these very, very different documents. A syllabus from one class never looks like the one from the next class from the next instructor. No consistency even within an institution. It's just down to the instructor. So they all look very different, but they have common elements. This turns out to be a really effective use case for an AI to say, hey, can you answer these basic couple of questions? Does it go this way? Does it go that way? And the registrar has found that really useful. So the ability to put AI in some basic decision-making places in a workflow, or to call out to tools and to take action on our behalf, I think is something that's really underexplored that we're going to be able to do a lot with.
I think we have time for one last question.
Try to make it quick. Hi, I'm Casey Keel, and I do graphic design for OIT, which, so I have a art question and was curious if you address any of that with the ethics for your students. As far as we've discussed before, what percentage does it stop being yours? Because, there's all art where you just say, generate this and it's done. And versus for years, we've been using generative AI fill, where it's just, I need to erase this bow. But is that still my artwork? I still spent hours and hours of time, and I don't want to say this is AI, even though I did use AI technically for this little part of it. So I was just wondering if you, or in general with a paper, if there's some sort of, I like following the rules. What's the percentage where it stops being your own creation and becomes AI?
I don't know a percentage of where it stops being you versus is AI. But I guess, something that you see passed around on the internet a lot is, I want AI to do the mundane tasks for me, the time-consuming tasks for me, while I get to do the creative and fulfilling things. And I think students feel that. We definitely have students in our class who are artists, and they kind of have tested how AI can work with them. And so it's not about taking away I guess students don't want to lose their agency or autonomy in the things that they make, and recognize that. And, there's obviously different incentives as to, creating graphics or art quickly at low cost. And so, there's plenty of resources online about, copyright lawsuits, especially around images now. So kind of where my thoughts are around that, but yeah.
All right, we have one very last question.
Hi, Will Brookert, College of Arts and Letters. I have a question based sort of piggybacking on some of the things that Steve, Brandon, and Alexi have given us in terms of some sort of broad use cases. Do we have a showcase at Notre Dame of some of the innovative, interesting, and practical use cases and examples of things people here at the university have actually used AI for? And if not, could you put one together?
Yeah, so jokingly, I'll add that to my to-do list, but it is something that has very much been on my mind. We have solicited from the pilots we've done a lot of feedback and stories of what people have done, and we have tried in various ways to bring that back to the community. So there's the monthly AI community of practice. If you go to ai.indy.edu/participate, you'll find a button to sign up for that. It's a monthly meeting. We talk about news of what's going on in AI, and we try to invite people to showcase what they're doing. So we did that explicitly with folks from the ChatGPT pilot. Steve was one of the guests there. I think we need to do more of that. I'm trying also to get that from across higher ed. We have great connections with other folks doing AI work in higher ed, and I want that resource to exist, just like you say, Steve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that user community of practice specifically, our team has gotten so much out of that. I think, right, you can really focus on just your line of business, kind of where you're at. So seeing, we have such a wide variety of colleges, divisions all across this campus. So seeing what all these different areas are doing, it just sparks so much creativity and just kind of that innovative thought to try different things. Or I had no idea AI could do that outside of just, here's what's in my fridge. Help me plan a dinner, right? You know, we have plenty of that, but seeing kind of what other people are doing is terrific. And so, yeah, that user community practice has been just great to help spark that creativity.
And lastly, I'll say that our student projects this past term were really extraordinary. And so we definitely want to showcase the videos that the students made.
Oh, yeah.
And so me and John Behrens have been talking about ways to put that online. Students who did research on accounting, on fitness, on biomedical devices, like you name it. There's a
I
lot
would
of
love to
very
see that.
cool
Yeah.
stuff that students did that
That's
we
great.
would love to share. So
That's great.
stay tuned.
Well, thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, Alexi Orchard from Arts and Letters, Brandon Rich from OIT, and Steve Cohen from HR for making this a great conversation today. And thank you for all of you for attending.
Yes.
Thanks so
great
much.
question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Krista, you want to do our official wrap up? Thank
So
you.
the signing off from behind the screens, IT at ND.
Stay tech savvy, Notre Dame.
And I also want to print it on a T-shirt, light a grotto candle for our data.
Our dates.
Yeah,
Excellent.
love that. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you all.